before we start, let me quickly introduce myself and the background of this video. So, my name is Rahma Sari. You can call me Rahma, and my last study ID number is 124. I'm from Halu University Faculty of Business and Economic. My department is Management, and this video is for Dr. Elianti Agus Mogodompit SAMSI's class Maritime and Rural Industry Management. Okay, first thing first, we have to know what's the difference between marine and maritime. People usually mix them up all the time, but they're not the same. So, marine is, if you think of it as the sea itself, the water, the fish, the coral, the mangrove is about nature and ecosystem. The main goal is to keep the ocean healthy. That's what we call the blue economy, using ocean resources without destroying them. Next is maritime. Maritime is about the people using the sea, ships moving goods, ports loading and unloading, trade routes, and even the sea safety. So maritime is more about business, transportation, and logistics. Course is called Maritime and Rural Industry Management. That's interesting because it connects the big maritime world with small village. So let's look at the four main parts of the ocean industry, and later we'll see how each part creates problems for rural communities. Here are the four areas. The first one is sea transport and ports. This is the heart of maritime business. Big ports use things like smart port technology and green port ideas to be more efficient and eco-friendly. But rural ports, they often lag behind. The second is shipbuilding and repair. This is about building new ships and fixing old ones. Big companies build steel ships with strict safety rules, but village fishermen use wooden boats. The standard doesn't fit them. The third is fishing and fish processing. This covers catching fish, fish farming, and turning fish into products like fish balls, crackers, or frozen fillets. The big dream is to add value, but rural villages often lack basic things like ice, electricity, or clean water. The fourth is energy and coastal tourism. This includes wave power, offshore mining, and beach resorts. The fancy concept is carrying capacity, how many tourists nature can handle. But this concept usually ignores whether local people can still access the beach. So, these are the four areas, and here's the problem. The ideas sound great on paper, but when you try to apply them in real fishing village, things fall apart. Why? Because the concepts were made for big cities and companies, not for poor remote village. Now, from these gaps, I come up with five thesis titles. Each one looks at the specific problem, and I will tell you exactly where that problem comes from. Alright, let's get into the five thesis titles. For the first title idea is the gap between Greenport ideas and how village fishermen actually deal with ship's waste. The problem actually comes from because the green port concept was made for big ports with lots of money and technology. But in small fishing villages, there are no rules about throwing away used engine oil or leftover fish. Fishermen just dump everything into the sea. The government doesn't provide trash bins or waste banks, so this problem exists because small fishing ports have no clear, affordable standard for keeping things clean. The second title idea is between the dream of efficient fish supply chains and the reality of village fishermen still relying on middlemen. The problem actually comes from a fish supply chain that's supposed to be fast, digital, and cut out middlemen. But in village, small fishermen don't have eyes, they don't have big freezer, and they don't have savings. So they borrow money from local middlemen and promise to sell their catch at low prices. These problems happen because Modern logistics never reach the village, while daily needs still have to be met. And the third title idea is expensive complicated safety standard versus simple wooden boats owned by village fishermen. This idea comes from because safety rules for ships were written for steel boats with standard engines, but village fishermen use wooden boats with all second-hand engines, or even no engine at all. They can afford to build boats that met the standard without the right papers. They're technically breaking the law whenever they go fishing. But if they don't fish, they don't eat. The root problem is that there's no safety standard that fits traditional boats. The fourth title idea is why fish processing program fail when villages lack ice, electricity, and clean water. These problems comes because the government often gives training on how to turn fish into high-value products like fish ball or crackers. But when people try to do it, the electricity keeps going out, there's no ice to keep the fish fresh, and clean water is hard to find. So in the end, fish are still sold raw at low prices. So the problem is the programs don't come with basic village infrastructure. And the last title idea would be when tourism planning only counts nature's limits but ignore village people's right to access the beach. This idea comes from because when someone wants to build a resort or a marine tourist park, they usually calculate how many tourists the environment can handle without damaging the coral reefs. But they never calculate whether the local villagers can still access the beach to fish or dry their nets. Often fishermen get patch of their own coastline. The root problem is that carrying capacity concept forget about people rights and fair access. So those are the five thesis ideas. All of them come from one big issue. What's written in fancy concept versus what's actually happening in small fishing village. If you want to do research that's grounded and actually helps people, try looking at gaps like this. That's all for this video. I hope this helps you to understand the material better and maybe gives you some ideas from your own thesis. Thanks for watching and see you next time.